Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. This time round we're looking at this car, a game-changing, world-changing car, the Audi Quattro. Audi sort of started a whole thing with developing the name Quattro, Italian for four, with the small q, and to this day Audi Quattro and Audi are bywords for each other, but this is the car that started it all, and a very interesting piece of engineering this. It was conceived by some personalities at Audi. The World Rally Championship rules changed. Four-wheel drive was permitted for the first time. So cars like the Lancia Stratos, the Ford Escort Mark I and Mark II in the early 70s or the late 70s were sort of immediately outsmarted and outclassed by this four-wheel drive beast. The Audi Quattro dominated motorsport for some years because of its four-wheel drive and other elements. But one of the people who was very instrumental in its coming into being was Ferdinand Piëch, the genius boss of VW, Audi, Bentley, Lamborghini, Skoda, Seat. They all eventually came under his umbrella. And he personally, because he was a very, very gifted engineer, was able to shape the VW Audi group into the powerhouse that it is today. I remember famously once Volkswagen had taken over the Bentley factory and all its infrastructure and the name, etc. at Crewe. Ferdinand Piech arrived and really rattled the members of the board good style by telling them he wanted the big V8 put in the Bentley Arnage, the 6.75 litre Bentley V8. And they said it couldn't be done. He said, I'll give you 18 months, otherwise you're out on your ears. And of course, the Bentley Arnage T came out of that. And the big V8 was around for many years to come. And this was all Ferdinand Piech's brainchildren. The other one that springs to mind is the Porsche 917 that dominated Le Mans. Derek Bell, who needs no introduction really, in 1971 in a Porsche 917 did 246 miles an hour down the Mulsanne Straight in a Porsche 917, a mighty flat 12 air-cooled beast of a thing. Again, the handiwork of Ferdinand Piëch, the brainchild of Ferdinand Piëch. I was extremely honoured to have a fly-in party happen here. We're on an airfield, so we had various people, senior captains of industry, arriving from Germany a couple of years ago now, and we had a party here in the afternoon exclusively for them. And I've got permission to say that one of the people who attended that party was Dr. Michael Piëch, the brother of Ferdinand Piëch, Dr. Ferdinand Piëch. It's a delight to have him here and show him around the workshop and some of the projects we were doing. So his brother came up with this in the late 70s, the Audi Quattro. It started with the Audi 100 that came out, I think, around about 1975. The first production petrol engine to have a 5-cylinder engine. Crank throws at 72 degrees. So in some respects, it's a bit of a mixed bag, a bit of a curate's egg, the 5-cylinder engine. In some respects, it was smoother than a 4-cylinder, but in others, rocking couples, balance, what's the word I'm looking for, resonance frequencies through the crankshaft. The 5-cylinder is actually inferior to the 4-cylinder. Along with this engine technology came, for the first time, hydraulic engine mounts. The engine mounts actually have a thick gel in them, like a black oil, and the engine sits on that, and they tend to act as a hydraulic damper and insulate the car from the vibrations of the 5-cylinder engine. Interestingly, a lot of cars these days have got hydraulic engine mounts, and some of them are even electrically charged. So when a car is accelerating hard or going round a corner and there's torque on the engine inside the body shell, the electrostatics charge metal particles in the engine mounts, and it actually causes the engine to actually be absorbed, a bit like a spring and damper on suspension. It actually checks the movement. All clever stuff. The 5-cylinder engine started in the mid-70s as a fuel injection engine. It used the Bosch Cagetronic system. Fuel injection was really marching on apace in the 1970s. It's a mechanical system. A lot of cars that we get in have Cagetronic. It was a very elegant and very simple system. Constant injection. All the injectors It wasn't pulsed, it wasn't sequential to each cylinder, but it worked very well. And at the time, it was also very friendly emissions-wise. A lot of US spec cars had Cagetronic injection on them. Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, the late Shadows and that era of Rolls-Royce and Bentley all had Cagetronic injection on them for the US market, whereas the rest of the world, apart from Japan, was soldiering on with the SU carburetors. So it was a very good system in its own way, much maligned, I think unfairly. So what Audi did with this, they were able to, because of the fact that the injectors operate individually in each cylinder, it meant that you didn't have an inlet manifold where the fuel, the atomized fuel, mixed with the air had to go sometimes straight in the middle and short tracked, and other times to the outer ends of the engine, where the mixture would be different. It would be weaker on the front and back of the engine because the mixture had travelled further than the centre cylinders where the mixture was rich. So a carburettor or central injection point on a 5-cylinder petrol engine was very, very unsatisfactory because different cylinders have different mixtures. Cagetronic injection comes along. What they did was take a 6-cylinder fuel distributor or metering head. They blanked off they didn't bother drilling the 6th port in the thing, so it became a 5-cylinder metering head. Very clever, very simple, very elegant. I can talk about that in a moment. The mechanical layout of this car is actually quite interesting because it's a Porsche 911 in exact reverse. So it's a 4-wheel drive transmission, obviously. The engine hangs out the front, right over the front axle. The engine is largely outbound of the front suspension. The gearbox comes this way, and then you've got the transfer box and then the prop shafts coming to the front and the rear. The Porsche 911 has exactly the same system, the engine overhanging the rear wheels, then the gearbox, and then thence to the 4 wheels from there. So it's sort of the 911 in reverse. And one of the things Audi had to do, because you've got so much weight overhanging the front end, the natural tendency is for the car to understeer, to plough straight on in the corners because it's so nose heavy. Whereas the 911, of course, famously does the exact opposite. You turn into a corner and before you know it, in the old days, if it wasn't quite right in terms of speed, road, surface, driving, accelerating, not accelerating, you'd find the tail end stepping out very dramatically on a Porsche 911. So engineering challenges from a space packaging point of view, it's brilliant because it gives you a big cabin with the engine way out there. But from a road holding point of view, there are challenges to be overcome. But overcome them they did. It's a very sure-footed car, this. I remember I drove one first of all in the late 80s, round about the time this car was actually built, and I was a bit underwhelmed with its straight line performance, 0 to 60 in just under 7 seconds and round about 137, 138 miles an hour. Not specs to write home about as such, even then, but the road holding and handling is pure fun. I was just taken away by how much you could dial up the G-force in corners. This is sort of the quintessential Audi Quattro. It's the single overhead cam engine, 10 valve. It's got these bulbous wheel arches a la Porsche 944. I think Porsche almost did a direct copy of them. These sort of finned alloy wheels, very similar to BMW Alpina alloy wheels. This dark anthracite colour, plaid interior, and then from 1984 onwards, the digital dashboard, which really, the manufacturers went through a fad in the 1980s of making digital dashboards. You had Audi, Vauxhall Opel, Aston Martin famously in the Lagonda, the wedge-shaped Lagonda. It's a very, very interesting car, this. I'm delighted to be able to present this car actually. It's come in for a little bit of rough running. We're going to have a look at that. This car is actually coming up for sale next Sunday at Hampson Auctions. It's well worth having a look at this car anyway, if you're in the market for one. But we'll press on and have a look at what makes this car tick, purr, kaplonk, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's quite the engineering marvel, the Audi Quattro. Well, as I was saying, the back of this engine actually finishes there, which is entirely in front of the front axle. So you've got all the weight of this cast iron block, alloy head, 5-cylinder engine overhanging the front end. When the Bentley Continental GT replacement was, actually before it was announced, I have a very good relationship with the Bentley factory at Crewe. In fact, that was the reason why Dr. Piech came to visit. The development engineer came to visit me one day in a prototype of the new Continental GT, and he said it handles much better than the old Continental GT. We've managed to sort it out at a stroke and get far better turning. And he said what they've actually done is just move the front wheels. I think it was 20 or 30 millimeters further forward. And because of that, because it was more towards the corners, a lot of modern cars, BMWs, etc., have the wheels very near the corner. It's to aid turning and help with that weight distribution. It makes a huge difference. But anyway, this car is very tidy. It presents beautifully. It's a very clever setup. Here's the radiator off to the side with a cooling fan and extraction vents there for the heat, all very logically laid out. The wastegate, which controls the turbo boost, is actually this device here, and it's quite interesting because you can adjust the turbo boost if you want to, and they're very underspecified because they want the engine to last a long time, and the boost is sort of adequate. I don't know what it is, about £7 or £8 per square inch, half a bar I think from the factory. But this is the same on the Citroën CX GTI Turbo. Quite a few cars use that wastegate. You can adjust it to increase the turbo boost very easily, actually, if you want, and still stay within very reliable parameters as regards exhaust temperatures, etc. That's why a lot of modern cars can be chipped and still actually go for many, many, many miles. So yeah, a beautifully laid out engine compartment really. This is the single overhead cam, hydraulic tappet, self-adjusting, very low maintenance. Here is the Cagetronic injection system. As I say, it's constant this, so you don't need to worry about the firing order or pulses or any of that stuff. This has been taken off a 6-cylinder Cagetronic unit, which could be something like a BMW 528i, something like that, from the same time. And what Audi did was literally just not bother drilling one of the holes so that in the metering unit, so it becomes a 5-cylinder unit. It doesn't matter that it's not symmetrical because it's constant. So yeah, a lot of cleverness in this car. I need to set up the injection system. It's not happy. It's just basically running weak. So I'm going to adjust that. We'll recheck it on a CO meter afterwards, but having done it for 40 years, I know where when the mixture's right on them and when it isn't. I'll use my litmus test with the little screw down there, which controls the mixture, and yeah, we'll take the car for a run. Yeah, these do purr rather nicely when they're idling smoothly, like all 5-pot engines. It's just a little bit weak. Et voila. That immediately sounds smoother. All I've done is adjust the mixture. What happens is the mechanism in here wears over the miles, and the adjustment screw is designed to take up any discrepancies. So all I've done is simply, it was running just a touch too weak. All I've done is just adjust that up a little bit. I doubt this is going to work, but let's try it. There you go. Ooh. Just hanging on by a thread. It certainly wasn't like that before. I'm now going to lower the base idle. I've disconnected the throttle idle speed sensor, idle speed regulator. I'm going to just adjust this now to compensate before I plug it back in. I have the feeling that mixture can go just a tiny bit more actually. That's just about as smooth as one of these will get. That is beautifully smooth. I'm very happy with that. If we can balance a coin on it, it's a good day in the office. It also helps power as well, because if it's running too weak, that will sap horsepower, and it will actually cause the exhaust gases to be hotter than normal, which affects the turbocharger. And this comes from the very early production car turbo period. So these need to be driven with the turbocharger very much in mind. They went on to water-cooled, liquid-cooled turbos sometime after this. But these need to be, if you do drive them fast, you need to leave them idling like this for a minute or two, just for the oil temperature to cool down and the turbo temperature, because they can get red hot turbos, for that to cool down, because if you switch it off instantly, the oil in the turbine will get so, in the turbo housing will get so hot it actually turns to carbon and then blocks itself and causes the bearings in the turbo to wear out super quick. In fact, I remember years ago, I was at a Ferrari Owners Club event. I was the technical advisor to the Ferrari Owners Club of Andalusia in the south of Spain, and a chap was there driving his F40 round, pulled into the pits, turned the engine off, car burst into massive flames because he didn't allow the turbos to cool down after doing a few hot laps of Jerez racing circuit in Andalusia. So it's very important. I'm very, very happy with the way that's tuned in now. It's just gorgeous. Very happy with that. Let's take it on the road. I haven't driven one of these for a little while, and I'd forgotten how basic and utilitarian they actually are. I mean, you're confronted with quite a basic dashboard, and the gear change is very clunky. But I'm sort of looking at this through a fresh pair of eyes, really. The handling feels very, very tight, as you might imagine. Steering, considering it is an early-ish front-wheel drive car, yes, of course it's a 4x4. It is still vectoring 50% of the power through the front wheels. This is it's got locking differentials, but it's still a fairly basic powertrain by modern standards, understandably. But this car really it rocked the world when it came out. It was a super cool bit of kit, particularly the post-1984 ones like this, with the digital dashboard. My chosen test route, my old faithful test route, I'm feeling every bump in the road in this car. The suspension is very firm. It feels like it's built, unsurprisingly, for a lot more power than it actually delivers. That's how I would describe this. This is a chassis wanting an extra 100 horsepower. That's how I would describe it. I think it was 2 litre. Let's just knock it down. Right, time to open the taps. It's beautifully linear, the power delivery. There's no sort of turbo lag as such. It's a nicely rounded power delivery. But we'll just try that again. Yeah. The turbo is there straight away. There's no lag. It's quite a modern feeling turbo setup in the fact that it's not sudden, it's not jerky, it's not delayed. It almost feels like a normally aspirated engine in a way, which is how a lot of modern turbo installations are. I'd actually forgotten how un-1980s the turbo boost delivery was on this car. I'm just going to pull over and see how smooth the engine feels in the car at idle. Absolutely perfect, that. Really nice. Very happy with that. And the pickup is instant. Again, Audi didn't fall into the trap, on the road cars at least, of putting a huge turbo on a comparatively small engine. You know, things like Ferrari F40s, obviously that's twin turbo. A lot of 1980s cars, it takes a while for the turbo to spool up to get it to a sensible speed in order to start delivering boost, and that's why you have turbo lag. But this hasn't got any, so the turbo, they've obviously gone out of their way to match this for road going trim. In other words, not a super huge turbo, but one that is happy to work at around 7 or 8 psi boost, half a bar. If you put too big a turbo on, it will lag, but it won't overspeed, because it's never going to be able to deliver the amount of air that the engine will take. Whereas if you put a smaller turbo on, if you increase the boost, there is actually a possibility that the turbo will overspeed and destroy itself. They can run at well over 100,000 RPM, a turbocharger, 10 times the speed of a jet engine. They don't like overspeeding, understandably, so they've deliberately kept the power of this engine down so that the turbo delivers instant, lovely power. The way it just builds up mid-range, yeah, it's all there. You can feel the chassis working through that bend. Just gorgeous. It has got grip in spadefuls, this car, actually, for a car of its age. It's not often I would road test a car in the wet, but it actually makes it more authentic, really, because this car is all about traction, 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 grip, grip, grip. That's really its trademark, and that's why it was had such a killer career in rallying, because it's built for grip and getting that power down to the road. You know, the power's coming in. If I do it on a very light throttle, the power's coming in at sort of 2,500 RPM, which is where it should be, of course. Let's just accelerate out of this roundabout now. Utter grip. Just point and shoot. Amazing for a car of its age. It reminds me of a Porsche 964 Carrera 4. The first time I drove one of those, I was astonished at the amount of grip the four-wheel drive system had. It wasn't a turbo, it was just a Carrera. But even now, this is a very capable car. Okay, you're not putting a huge amount of horsepower through it, but it still goes about its business very well. This is quite the machine. And in standard trim, it's got a very burbly exhaust going on at the back, but nothing too intrusive. This is not a Focus RS. This is a more rounded car than that, in the way that Audi threw everything but the kitchen sink at this. And again, I'm just going to get this car, the four-wheel drive system, working on it. Amazing. Obviously this is somebody else's car, so I'm not going to go too crazy in it. It is not a press demonstrator, it is a 40-year-old car, but what a machine. It really does drive very well. Yeah, I'm very happy with this. And if you do want to consign your car for the same sale as this, it's not too late to do so. Yeah, I like this car. Very efficient, as you might expect. Well, that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop video. Please subscribe. Please tune in for the next one, and thanks for watching.